Greetings children, welcome to the online classes. This is Aishwarya. Please like and subscribe the channel for the further updated videos. The following video is for class 4, subject General Science, chapter 10, Sources of Water, part 3. Now in part 1 and part 2 of this lesson, we learned what is groundwater and what are the different man-made water sources, right? We learned about the different definitions of rivers, ponds, lakes, streams, wetlands. Then we learned what are canals and what are reservoirs. Now tell me, what is the other name of canals? What are canals also called as? Canals are also called as aqueducts, aqueducts, aqueducts. Then we learned what are reservoirs. A reservoir is a man-made structure built for storing water. It generally refers to a large natural or artificial lake, storage pond, or a tank created for a dam. Now, I'm reading from page number 87 in your textbook. I hope you have your textbooks with you. Please use them. Let us think. Why do we need man-made water sources? Now, in the page number 87, there is a small box, right? So we're going to read from that. Villages and cities came up near water bodies. It may be a river. Like Delhi, it was built on the banks of river Yamuna. Bengaluru came up as it had many lakes in and around it. Water supply is needed to fulfill the needs of the people living there. Now, it is very important. As I told you, water is very important to our life, to our day-to-day life. So the villages and cities were built where there were more water bodies or closer to the river, very closer to the river. The river Yamuna is very closest to the Delhi, right? Then Bengaluru came up, or Bengaluru grew because there were many lakes in and around Bengaluru. Okay, that's the whole point. Where there is availability of water, water is, as it is very important to us, our civilization or people around it start growing, they start settling, they start doing agriculture and everything around the source of water. That is why we need the water bodies. As population grows, population means number of people. As population grows, the water from the natural resources will not be enough. So, we make man-made water canals. They divert the water from the water bodies to a place where it is needed. Now, as the population grows, that means the number of people grows, just to be being dependent on the small water resource cannot be enough. So we have to start searching for the other sources of water. So for Bangalore, the lakes have dried up like anything. There were plenty number of lakes in and around Bangalore, but today what has happened, all the lakes have been dried up because the population in Bengaluru has grown up so much since a decade. I can tell, decade or 2 decades, it's grown up so much. So we are dependent on the closest Kaveri river for the water. So how to bring that water from Mysuru to Bengaluru? We have to use the canal systems where the water is directed towards the city. Water in the rivers, if left to settle, it will flow and go to the sea. The water in the river is always flowing towards the sea, isn't it? So we must stop the river at some point and store it for further use, for future use. For the use on later days, it is necessary for us to stop that flow of water and use it later. Now this is where the dams come into place. Huge dams have been built across rivers all over the world. These dams stop the flow of water, and this water is stored in huge reservoirs. Water from these reservoirs is released for agriculture and other purposes. Understood? Next is groundwater. What is groundwater? Groundwater is Fresh water present below the ground. Fresh water that is present below the ground is called the groundwater. Just like surface water, water is replenished by the rain. Replenished means replaced. Once when we start using the surface water, it is given back by the rain. Same way as we use the groundwater, it is replenished or replaced by rains. Okay. The water that gets stored under the ground depends on the permeability of the soil. Permeability means the ability of the water to sink down the ground, to sink under the ground. That ability of that soil to take in water is called the permeability. Understood? So, the water that gets stored under the ground depends on the permeability of the soil. If we put the cement and the tar over this soil, the permeability of the soil will reduce. They won't be able to take in the water. Okay, unlike surface water, groundwater does not evaporate easily. Here you can see the picture of the groundwater. It's usually below the ground. Okay, we have to either dig a well, bore well, uh, or a bores under the ground to get this ground water up so that we can use it. So the water the water that is under the ground does not easily get evaporated. Like the evaporation that happens on the surface water. So the water in the underground is more than what it is on the surface. The surface water is lesser compared to the groundwater. We use the groundwater naturally through streams and brooks. By digging wells and bore wells, we have increased the use of groundwater. Then we can increase the input to the groundwater source by building reservoirs or detention pots. Now, how are we losing groundwater? How are we losing groundwater? For that, you need to understand what is a water table. We know how much water there is underground by looking at the water table. So, what is water table? The water table is the level below the surface where we can find water. Okay, that means how deep we have to go under the ground to get the water is what is the water table. Now, when we use too much groundwater, then the water table will go down. We will have to dig deeper and deeper to get water. When water evaporates, the minerals in the water remains on the surface. If there is more evaporation and less precipitation, then the minerals and salt content of the soil will increase. Evaporation means the water gets converted to water vapor. If the water gets converted to water vapor and goes up, and there is very less precipitation, that means if there is very less rainfall, the minerals and the salt content of the soil will start increasing. These minerals will seep into the ground and make the groundwater salty. Thus the groundwater will become unusable. Then the other purpose of the groundwater getting polluted is polluting the soil. We also make underground water unusable through pollution. Pollution also can spoil the water that is underground and even the surface water. I hope you understood this much of the lesson. Water scarcity and rainwater harvesting, we will cover it up in the next video. Stay at home, stay safe, take care of yourself and keep learning, children. Do the exercises in your textbooks as well as your workbooks.